No body, no goodbye, just a young man, gone. Years have passed, but the pain still lingers. Maybe he's still out there, whispers his mother, Maureen. The mystery is haunting, because George Smith IV simply vanished. At just 26, George was full of life. He was charming, funny, and completely in love with his new wife, Jennifer. The two had just married in a beautiful ceremony in Newport, Rhode Island. George was preparing to take over his family's liquor business in Greenwich, Connecticut, and those who knew him said he had a magnetic personality, able to light up any room with just a smile. "He used to call me the old man," his father, George Smith Sr., recalled with a smile. He was ready to bring fresh ideas into the business. He had a real passion. George met Jennifer Hagel, a lively future teacher, and the two quickly became inseparable. After 3 years together, they were married and soon set off on their dream honeymoon, a Mediterranean cruise on Royal Caribbean's Brilliance of the Seas. "They looked so happy," said George's sister Brie. "When we said goodbye, it all seemed so perfect." On June 29, 2005, the Newlyweds boarded the ship in Barcelona. There they met another honeymoon couple, Paul and Galina Ktinitsky. The four quickly became friends. "We had fun together," Paul said. "They seemed like a great, happy couple. They explored ports, took countless photos, and spent long nights laughing and drinking. George didn't handle alcohol well. He'd get tipsy after just a few beers, but he was always in good spirits and easy to like." July 5, 2005. Late night. That night, George and Jennifer went to the casino with the Ktinitskys. Jennifer played blackjack while George went to the craps table. He also spoke with a student named Josh Askin and a group of Russian-American men, Zachary and Greg Rosenberg, and their friend Rusty Kaufman. They had all crossed paths throughout the cruise. Security footage showed George laughing and enjoying himself. At one point, he returned to his room for more money. He was wearing a luxury Breitling watch, something that may have drawn attention. Brie explained, "He looked wealthy, but he really wasn't. Still, appearances matter." By 2:30 a.m., the group moved to the ship's nightclub. Witnesses said George appeared very drunk, while Jennifer seemed annoyed. At one point, someone claimed she kicked him during an argument. She left the club, reportedly with a casino manager named Lloyd Bower. Later, Lloyd told police he went straight to his girlfriend's room at 3:25 a.m. He passed an FBI polygraph and was cleared. George stayed with Josh and the 3 Russian-American men. He could barely walk, so they helped him back to cabin 9062 around 3:52 a.m. Jennifer wasn't there. She was later found unconscious in a hallway, also heavily intoxicated. At 4:01 a.m., the group said they left George in bed, took off his shoes and said goodnight. One of them even said George gave them a hug in thanks. But at 4:10 a.m., a nearby guest, a U.S. deputy police chief, reported hearing loud voices from George's cabin, as if a group was playing drinking games. Moments later, the mood changed. An argument broke out on the balcony. A witness later told police, "I heard several male voices, then one voice shouting, 'Good night, good night,' like someone was being sent away." Then came a loud crash. The time was about 4:30 a.m. Another passenger later said the sound was terrifying, like something heavy slamming into metal. The next morning, 16-year-old Emily Roosh stepped onto her balcony. What she saw shocked her. A large blood stain on the lifeboat canopy directly beneath George's cabin. Meanwhile, crew members found Jennifer passed out in a hallway, confused and unable to remember anything after visiting the casino. When staff entered their room, they found it in chaos, furniture out of place and small bloodstains on the sheets. When the ship arrived in Kusadasi, Turkey, local police came aboard. Jennifer was devastated. She wept, asking only to speak to her father. She still didn't know George was missing. Investigators questioned Josh Askin and the 3 Russian-American men. Unbeknownst to authorities, Josh's father secretly recorded his son's interview. During questioning, when officers mentioned the blood, Rusty looked truly shocked. But one question remained. What really happened between 4:01 and 4:30 a.m.? And more haunting, Why was George's body never found? In a later video, Rusty casually remarked, "The wife was crazy." All four men claimed they had left George in his cabin at 4:01 a.m. and returned to their own room to eat. But this so-called late-night meal started to fall apart under scrutiny. Royal Caribbean phone records showed several short calls placed from Zach and Rusty's cabin to room service after 4:13 a.m. But no food was ever ordered, and nothing was delivered. It raised a serious question. If they weren't eating, what were they doing? Then came another shocking revelation. Just 2 days after George disappeared, an 18-year-old passenger reported being raped by the same group, Rusty, Greg, and Zach's younger brother. She said she had blacked out from drinking. The assault was filmed. The men's lawyers claimed it was consensual, but the video told a different story. The woman was visibly crying. The FBI kept the footage. It became critical in their case, and it wasn't the only video they uncovered. Another recording taken just hours after George vanished showed the men laughing over lunch, passing the camera around and making jokes about his death. One voice was heard saying, "George went parachute riding off his balcony." At the end, Greg Rosenberg flashed gang signs and declared, "Told you I was gangster." Greg would later tell a lawyer, Mike Jones, George didn't just fall. Something wild happened that night. The Smith family never accepted the idea of an accident. They hired Jones to help uncover the truth. In sworn statements, Josh Askin refused to answer almost every question, including basic ones like his birthday or whether George had been killed. His lawyer, Keith Greer, explained, "They warned him. If he changed anything from what he said to the grand jury, he could be charged with perjury. So I told him, take the fifth on everything." Rusty and Zach gave only brief responses. Greg, who was later imprisoned in Florida for drug crimes, was the most open about what happened. Yet none of them were ever charged. The FBI said the case stayed open for nearly 10 years. Then, in January 2015, George's parents received a call. They were invited to a final meeting. George Smith Sr. still remembers the moment the FBI closed the case. "They told us there wasn't enough evidence to continue," he said. "After nearly 10 years, they called it an accident. We were devastated." But George's family refused to give up. They offered a $100,000 reward for any information leading to an arrest or conviction. They believed someone still knew the truth, and that person might be Josh Askin, now living in California. One ship employee recalled overhearing Josh say, "I know more than they think. Those guys nearly got me arrested in Turkey." Josh's lawyer claimed the quote was taken out of context, but inside sources said Josh failed his FBI polygraph. So did Rusty Kaufman. Greg Rosenberg took a lie detector test on his own. It was inconclusive. His explanation? "I've got ADH. I move around too much." CIA profiler Phil Houston later analyzed Greg's behavior in interviews for CBS News. Greg didn't say, "I didn't do it." He gave reasons why he wouldn't have done it. "That's a classic sign of deception," Houston explained. He noted Greg often paused before answering, especially when asked if anything in his room could connect him to George's disappearance. Greg eventually replied, "No," but his hesitation said more than the word itself. The Smith family and their attorney, Mike Jones, believed this was never just a tragic fall. It was about money. Rumors on the ship suggested George had thousands of dollars in cash. His flashy watch caught eyes in the casino. To some, that may have looked like an opportunity. Jones believes that after George was helped to bed, a fight broke out. Someone, or more than one person, stayed behind to search the room. When George woke up and tried to stop them, things escalated. Jones's theory, George was pushed or thrown off the balcony. Even Greg Rosenberg was caught on video saying, "George didn't just fall. That didn't just happen." Years passed. Jennifer remarried and moved forward with her life. But for George's parents, time stopped. Maureen Smith. "We're not giving up. Not until we get justice for our son, George Sr. I never imagined I'd reach this age still searching for the truth. But we'll keep going. One day, someone will come forward." George Smith IV boarded that cruise as a young husband, full of hope. He never came home. George Smith IV boarded that ship as a newlywed and never came home. Nearly 2 decades later, his family still waits for answers. No justice, no closure, just silence. If you know something, say something. And if this story moved you, share it. Because the truth doesn't disappear. Even when people do. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more real unsolved stories. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe.